What's good? I am Yish, and today we're going to take a look at MDrummer by Melda Production. MDrummer, we're going to look at the quick setup screen, the mixer screen, and the drum set editor. I'm not going to touch on the song, rhythm editor, or rhythm generator in this video. I typically do not use those, so I did not dig into those portions of the plugin. This is the screen for selecting drum kits. You have a couple of options here. You have, of course, solo and mute, right? Basic stuff. This is the volume for the instrument. You have to keep clicking it in order to change the volume. Or you can trigger from the pad itself. Pretty simple. A couple of basic options here at the top. The master sound volume, the panorama width, and the global pitch. Right click on any option to reset it. Double click it to enter values. We also have down here the actual pan for the entire kit. All right, global volume. Right, global panorama. Global velocity. So if I turn this down, let's see. All right, and then I haven't found what rim shot from is yet, but I'm sure that's in the manual. All right, so that is the basic drum set selector section. You also have a designer screen, which is this next one here. You are able to filter which type of drums you want to design or select, right? Or you can just do them all. Now, let me turn it down just a little bit here, because when you click on any one of these, it gives you a preview, right? Okay. This here allows you to select the next drum. Right? So you can scroll through or select through or choose by just clicking the arrow here. The three dots down at the bottom allows you to actually load up an independent drum for that particular pad, right? So I can go in here and I can load up anything that I choose, right? The dice here, of course, is random. So we picking a random sound. Effects. Allows you to do random effects. I think that's good because that gives you a lot of options to get something different. If you click layer, it will add a duplicate of that drum kit, as you can see. So that has just that sound in it. And this is the original sound. Next, of course, is the save button. So if you want to save a particular sound on that pad, you can do that here. They're called components. Again, you have the volume up or down, right? There's a lot of stuff in this thing, man. It is massive, massive. So that's that for that. Next, we have the master effects. This allows you to load up effects on the master channel in the mixer from this section. Yeah, these are all, as it states, master effects. Taking a look at the mixer, it's a pretty simple but powerful setup, just like you would in your DAW, right? You have your outputs. Okay, you get 16 outputs. You have the ability to trash your effects. You also have the ability to do things like save, load, copy, paste, add, randomize, and a couple of extra randomized functions. Very useful in just getting something that you don't have, that doesn't exist right now, right? I may need to be corrected, but ratio is the ratio of dry or close and overhead sound. Sends is self-explanatory. That goes to your send channel. So right now nothing's on 1, but on 2 we do have something here for the send 2. Pitch, of course, pitch. close mics. All right, panning, volume. This button allows you to actually go into the drum set editor, which we'll take a look at next. Solo, mute, and then you can trigger your sound from the mixer. So multiply that by all of the channels here, and it's all the same. You have 2 send effects, you have an overhead channel, and 2 room channels. And then to the right of that, you have your output channels. Right now it's on output 1 through 4. If I click over here to the right, you'll see that we load additional outputs, percussion, toms, and then there's a batch modify function. Pretty extensive, right? All right, now let me talk about the effects here. Very important. You click this button and you get essentially all of the effects, full effects available, from my understanding, for Melda Productions. So this is all of the effects that you can get as standalone effects, and some of this stuff is ridiculously powerful, man. Any of these can be loaded onto any of the mixer tracks, right? So let's just see here, and I'm just loading stuff up, man, just to show you that it's ridiculous how much processing. And mind you, Melda stuff, even though they don't look like what you may be used to with other plugins, Melda stuff is extremely detailed and powerful. When I say that, I'm not saying that just to be saying that. Man, some of this stuff, when you right click on it, let's see if I can find some of this stuff. Let's see here. It's not in this, but here's like this, for an instance. This thing has a whole separate section of settings that you have within a portion of the actual effect. Very detailed, very deep, very capable, right? Let's move on. This is pretty much set up how you would expect it. Now there's this batch utility here. So what this allows is based off of the category of the sound. You can affect all of the snare 1s, all of the snare 2s, all of the bass drums, all of the toms, hi-hats, and cymbals. You can sort things, you can auto output the gain, and you can change the panorama by default. So that's what this does. This just allows you to kind of simplify some of the things that you want to do, right? So if you see I turn one of these, this was down here before. When I turn this now, it puts it at the same, it basically groups it. That's what this does. All right. In order to minimize it, you click the button at the bottom here. So let's see. We'll cut all of these out. So we have some room here. Final thing here at the top, you can mute the close microphones. You can mute the overheads in rooms. You can enable or disable the global effects. Show the effects, not show the effects, right? Show advanced turns off the extra stuff in between, and you just get simply the faders, the pan, and the insert effects. And of course, the stuff at the bottom stays the same. All right. And then of course you have the in plugin help, which should come in quite handy during your course of usage. All right, that's the mixer section. Now, I want to say one thing, and I believe this is across the board here. There is an option over here that says Toolbar. When you click this little section comes up. This allows you to store whatever you're doing. So if you want to do something different here, you can do that. Down at the bottom allows you to A/B between things, right? Switch back and forth. There is a morphing button here that opens up a morphing panel, which allows you to morph in between the sections. I have not used that. There is a copy and a paste function. If you did something and you want to undo what you did, there is an undo button here. When you click on MIDI, and when I tell you again, deep, this allows you to assign MIDI controllers. And there's a preset function to save and load. Deep, 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 deep. All right, now at the top here, we have a limiter so that anything over 0 gets squashed back down if that's your choosing. And then this here, this is the upsampling option. When you click on this, you have the ability for the real time all the way up to 1024. We're talking, this is crazy. This is what I mean by Melda stuff is I have not seen a plugin with this much detail and this much capability in it. If I was to click on this 1024 upsampling, it's going to make it, and I'm trying to make sure I read this correctly. We're at 44 kilohertz. That's the standard that I work at. But this is 45,158 kilohertz. I don't even know what that sounds like. But you can upsample from here and get a higher quality. Now this will mostly make the effects much more analog sounding, in my understanding. You do have the option to do it just for the render. Of course, this may take forever to render if you set this high. I do know I just on GP clicked this and the program pretty much locked up. So I'm not even going to try, but they are clickable, right? This will increase your CPU usage. Keep that in mind if that's something that you're interested in. All right, we've touched on the mixer. Now let's get to the meat of our meal here. This is the drum set editor, and the paradigm of deep and capable continues. So what do we have here? At the top, you have the same controls that you got in the quick setup. You have the ability to load a drum set from here, load and join, load and replace, generate and save, right? And then we have an advanced section here. To the left here is how you actually select your drums by hand, or you can select on MIDI. Pretty simple. Down below that, we have the actual basic setup. So for our kick drum here, we can name it. It even has a on-board keyboard in case your keyboard's not functioning. We have a way to trigger it from here. You can change the type of drum. You have a mute function. Only one instance means it will cut itself off. Swap left and right. Changes the samples left and right. Pitch, of course. Volume. And output volume. So it's two separate volumes that you have one for the inherent drum itself going into the mixer, and then the other one is the actual mixer's volume. So if I click on mixer, turn this all the way down and go back to the drum set editor, you'll see that the output volume has been changed. So this is the mixer's volume. This is the mixer's send 1 and the mixer's send 2, right? Basic stuff. There is an advanced panel. Here's where things get a little different. So the freeze function allows you to freeze whatever processing you have on that channel, because they will use CPU like a regular plugin. This is the update button. So if you make any changes that you want to reflect under the freeze, you would click this button to do that. Velocity by max velocity messes with the velocity somehow. Again, I haven't gotten that deep into it. Auto gain in, click that, and auto gain out. It will modify the gain and output gain based on the threshold, right? All right, next is channel. This is the MIDI channel from what I understand. The close mic volume is basically the source sound. If I turn it down, you can hear the overheads. Otherwise, you can change the source volume. The overhead room panorama, volume by velocity. So you can essentially have no velocity or full velocity, right? Pitch by velocity, kind of self-explanatory, but I'll demonstrate. The harder you hit, the higher the pitch. These next two come definitely handy for removing that machine gun sound. This allows it to just kind of change some of the internal properties so that not every hit is the same, right? A little bit more, as it states, realisticity. Self fade out length. This kind of goes into play with only one instance. So up against itself, when it, for instance, if you're doing a triple on a kick, the release basically will be affected by how much of the self fade out length is here. And then this fade out length is determined by what other sample basically mutes the original sample. And you can change how much of the fade out length you do with that. And then down here, I have not figured this one out yet, so I won't even speak on it. Below this is where you can assign the key for that particular sample, right? Or sample set. The ones in blue are already used. The one in red is what it's currently set to. You can add it to as many ones as you want, right? So that's me hitting 3 different ones here. That's beautiful. I have to have at least double, sometimes triple keys for some of the playing that I do. All right, so that's the advanced section. Now, there's one thing here that I found late, and I kind of did not pay attention because, again, I don't typically read manuals, and that's these little boxes here. Now, what you see is for each one that you click on, and this is probably why I missed this, for each one of these, when you click on it, it has a checkbox next to it, right? But if you check a box of a corresponding sample, that corresponding sample now becomes the mute sound. So, and I found this out because I was replacing a open hat, right? And I couldn't figure out how to mute the open hat with the new one that I had because it was not automatically set. The one that you want to be as the muter has to be selected, and the thing that you want to mute has to be checked. All right. Very important. All right. That's the left section here. Moving on. The next section here is where you select your various sounds, right? So again, you get the entire library here. Now this is just for the multi-sample. Right now I have unselected a kick drum. I'm clicking on the key here, but nothing's playing because nothing's selected. So if I go to one of these here, you can see that they are broken down into their separate components. When I tell you this library is massive, it is extremely massive. And mind you, these are, in a sense, categories, right? You click on one of these and you get all of this here, right? And some of them have even additional ones within it. There's a lot of stuff to do here, and this is just multi-sample. This is just a multi-sample engine, right? All right, so I'm gonna pick a kick drum here. We'll stick with that, okay? Cool. So on to the next. Now we have our envelope. Of course, envelopes work how envelopes work. So if I want to shorten up the kick here, click on this, double click a section to add a point, right? Very customizable. Now, to show you another deep section here, if you right click here, you get all of these options, which has their own presets, right? Jesus, man, look at that. That's ridiculous. You can randomize them. You can copy and paste, right? It has a draw mode where you can actually go in here and draw instead of double click to add points. Okay, you can snap it to the Y grid, or you can lock points so they can't be moved or changed. You can insert points from here. There is a step sequencer function. When I tell you this thing is deep, trust me when I say it's deep. Okay, and deep may not be what you want. You don't have to get deep. It's just an option, right? So that's that. That's the envelope. Pretty simple. You can zoom down here, right? You can lock the zoom so it doesn't move. All right. Same as over here. Lock and whatnot. And of course, reset. The pitch works the same way. You enable it. You get all of the same options and functions that you did there with all of the same presets. All right. So I don't have to repeat. Again, this is the pitch envelope. You should know what that means. That means that if I change, and let me enable it, envelope, all right, pretty self-explanatory. All right, color. Click on color. You can basically move the sound around the various microphones. Room, two, and overhead, or a mix of them all, or just a close. And you can right click on it to reset it. You can also make that a global option. Deep, right? Layers, of course, is the various sample layers that come with those particular drums. So these are the various sample layers in here, and then you can modify the velocity mapping. And that's what this section here is for, is velocity mapping, right? Lastly, we have the mixer. Now this is the multi-sample mixer. This is where it allows you to mix between the microphones independently here for each sample. So for instance, if I click on the colored section here, that's just the close kick drum, right? Change the volume, the pan, and the width, right? You can solo it as well. Now you can start adding in the other. If we solo this one, that's what you get there. That's the out microphone. Then we have the sub microphone, right? Then you have the overheads. We have rooms, stereo rooms, mono rooms, and then a chamber. All right, and then you can mix and match how loud you want these things. And that's just for that, in this instance, the kick drum. Again, pan and width. Now, how much you want this to be mixed in with the close microphone allows that here. All right, so just below the tabs here, because these are the different engines, you can delay your sample, right? Forward or backwards, your option. The length of your sample, so you can actually shorten it, right? Mix the overhead and rooms from this button. All right. Equal layers, right? You see that? So that just changes how the layers are laid out. And then the sample selection, you have various options in here as well. All right. So that's the multi-sampler. Now there is a section up here for your velocity layers. So it allows you to control which layer on the velocity that your plugin is triggered from. You can add an additional velocity layer from here. Now this is a multi-sample, so you can add a multi-sample on top of a multi-sample, on top of a sampler, on top of a scratcher, on top of everything that you see here. You also have a random function for your velocity layers, or you can select them all and modify them all, right? Okay, now with that being said, there are several engines in the plugin. We've just been looking at the multi-sampler one. If I select sampler here, it's now empty, right? And you have to be careful, right? So that's probably where our undo function comes in. There it is. Okay. So if you make a mistake, don't forget that undo function is over here, right? And again, in order to get that, it should say toolbar on it. So when you click that, you have these options over here, and your undo is down here. So you can undo any mistakes that you've made. But we're not going to do that. We're going to click on sampler. And essentially what sampler is one sample rather than multi. So you do have a number of samples that comes with the program, right? And this probably works more in the drum machine style, like you would an MPC, right? Where you get a single sample. But I do believe, and let's test this out because I have not yet. If I click on layer, we still have our clap. I'm going to find another instrument. And there it is. You have multi layers, right? Interesting. And let's see. Yep, just as I thought. Let's do it like this. Let me find something that makes more sense. So congas, right? We got a high conga, and we'll choose conga high 3. So right now they're both playing, right? So velocity, the low end of the velocity and the high end of the velocity. So we have just one playing right now. And actually, which one is that? That's this guy. So if I choose a different one, here we go. Right? So let's say we want this one to be 0 through 50. And I will double click that and put this on 50. Right? So just the lower half, we change this to 50. Right? So you can do multi-samples with this as well. So you only get two options. You get the envelope and you get the pitch envelope. So we've already touched on how the envelopes work with the addition of the right click properties for all points. So it's more basic than the multi-sample function. The multi-sample function seems to be more geared towards sampling of acoustic drum kits and utilizing the options that you get with the extra functions of this, right? When you talk about layers and then the color and the mixer. So those are the only two options you get besides the velocity layers for samples. It's much more simplified for dealing with basically electronic drums or any samples that you import that are not necessarily multi-sampled, right? It's a much more simplified interface. Let me backstep here a little bit. The multi-sampler, what I'm noticing is that the library itself really only utilizes the multi-sampler, right? And there's no way to, at least so far that I've seen. Under the sampler, you have here the ability to look at the factory stuff, right? Or you can do custom, or you can do your whole entire system. Right? So you can go in and add your own samples when utilizing the sampler, right? And then of course here you have delay again. And you also have a reverse function. Pretty simple, but it makes for good, quick and easy drum kit designing without going through a lot of stuff. Now, there is a start function here. Right? So it allows you to go in and you can zoom with the middle mouse button to set the start point. There is no end point function. And the way you get around that is simply to add an additional point, right? Turn the original one down, and then you can change this to stop that. And then you would add an additional point to completely close it off, right? All right, we're gonna take a quick break.
You're watching Fish in Your Ear.
All right, the next section here is the scratcher. Now this is similar to the sampler in that you don't get a whole lot of options, but it has a very specific function. Of course, that function is scratching. I'll do some additional little videos for some of these sections here, especially with the scratcher and the sampler. Now, this is sub-sample synth. I have not really dug into this. Let's see if I grab one of these. So that's our kick drum. As you can hear, it's adding some additional synthesized sound on top of that, right? So right now we have, oh wow. Right, okay. So if I turn these down, let's find out what happens. You should already be seeing the immense capabilities of what we got here. All right, we are at 0. No sound. So let's reset this one. Sub bass. Right? Next one. So that's mixed in with the first one. Then we have this one. More bass. Right? Oh, look at that. Generate sub-sample libraries from samples. Wow. Let's see. My sample library is currently located under G. Let's see here. Let's look at the converse stuff. Is stuff in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Oh, see what I mean by deep? I can't, man. I can't cover this under this review. This is too deep. This is too deep. We'll touch on this in its own video. On to the next one. Synthesizer 4NN. I have not done anything with this yet. Ah. Wow. So essentially these are waveforms that you can select and change them into drums. Wow. This is basically an analog drum creator. EDM unite, right? I mean, that's crazy, man. And there's only a few samples here. But you can click the randomize button and find stuff to your heart's content. And as you can see, it's not much in the way besides delay up here as far as options is concerned. And of course, you can layer anything on top of anything here. If I want to put a multi-sample with that, I can. Right? All right, so that is basically what we have in our grasp here with drums. The other half of this video, of course, is this massive library called Drum Empire that they just added to MDrummer. All right, so let us take a listen, man, at some of the libraries that come with this. And we're going to do this just based off of the kits. Right now, we're going to worry about the kits right now. We're going to get into the details of the individual drums. I do have a record, and I'll play that after we take a listen at some of the libraries that come with Drum Empire 2020. This is called Altruistic Phobia. Nice, man. No complaints here. Automatic silk. Essential Rock 1. Unbiased Prosecution. Yamaha Recording Custom Bottomless. Yamaha Recording Custom. You can see that there's a lot that comes with this kit. Massive library, man. Massive library. And again, you can do whatever you want to do. You can layer these things with electronic sounds, with different samples, with synthesized sounds. Just wow. Wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. All right. So what have I done with this, right? So this is what we came up with. Everything that is playing, of course, is MDrummer. So we have here snare, hat, overhead, kick, right? We also have two separate MDrummers. Now I didn't separate the independent drums here, but here's some percussion. And another percussion set. All together. And that's just me just jumping head first in and going at it like I've used a plugin for years. That is my review of MDrummer Part 1. We will come back and look at some of the more independent things and really dig into the capabilities of this plugin. It is deep. It is super deep. It is of high quality. And there's this whole ecosystem that comes with this plugin that, my goodness, man, is enormous what you can do. How deep do you want to go down the rabbit hole? Keep an eye out for a more deeper tutorial set of videos going into the controls a little more and just, you know, visually and audibly what they're doing, because I'm going to learn and master MDrummer. This thing kicks ass, right? So with that, hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment in the comment section to let me know what you thought about the video. If there's some additional stuff you want to see in MDrummer, let me know that in the comments. And again, The Drum Empire 2020 now comes with MDrummer, which gives you now a total of over 60, 70 gigabytes of drum samples with this thing, man. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're interested in seeing any more videos. If you do hit that subscribe button and you're interested in getting a notification when I post new videos, make sure you hit that bell. All right. And with that, you've been watching Yish in Your Ear. Stay tuned. What?